meant to go online today. I was very busy.
Okay. Well, we have more time, so once we have life, we will make the time to use it for meaningful purpose. All right.
I'll
So,
catch up at some point.
okay. Indeed, that is a good thing to do. We're going into Shemot Exodus chapter 27. We already read Shemot chapter 25 and 26, where things inside the ark were mentioned. Looking at the ark, looking at the table, looking at the menorah, the inner curtains and the frames that formed the dwelling, those were duly described in 25 and 26. Now we're in Shemot chapter 27, and it takes us outward of the Mishkan, and we read about the courtyard and the bronze altar and olive oil and lamp and those items. I'll begin by reading Shemot chapter 27, verses 1 through to 8.
Okay, Brother Asa. I thought it just came to me a while ago, just when you mentioned art.
Yeah.
And for one split second, I was like, my mind went back to those arc. And for a moment, a split second, I was a bit confused. And I'm like, arc? And then it hit me. Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm like, why
Yeah.
were they named an ark? Even why wasn't Noah's vehicle a boat? Why an ark? And then no, the Ark of the Covenant. Why were these two items named an ark? Have you ever thought of that?
No, I've never thought of it, but my original thought of an ark was one that is safe from water. But then I realized no, the water is not the defining function for ark, because the ark of the covenant, unless there was some exposure, later exposure that was expected of it to rain and water and elements, then I just think ark is something for protection. That's the main thing I'm seeing in common with Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant, right? Things could put in there. Noah's Ark is much more gigantic, while the Ark of the Covenant was small compared to the Ark of Noah. But both are the Creator's design, right? And both are for protection. But I never thought of it, so I'm glad you pointed it out. That yes, the Ark is the same word for Noah. So the only next step for me to do is look at the root word for both and see if
Right.
they're the same, just the same, right? So
Things don't just happen like that. There is some significance to it.
between the ark and Noah's Ark, okay, yes, and I hope that the Creator will open up that to us so we can see and have a better understanding of it. All right, let's read Shemot chapter 27, verses 1 through to 8. And you shall make a slaughter place of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The slaughter place is square, and its height 3 cubits. You shall make its horns on its four corners, and its horns are of the same, and you shall overlay it with bronze. And you shall make its pots to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, and its fire holders. Make all its utensils of bronze, and you shall make it a grating for it, a bronze network, and shall make on the network four bronze wings at bronze rings at its four corners, and shall put it under the rim of the slaughter place beneath, so that the network is halfway up the slaughter place. And you shall make poles for the slaughter place, poles of acacia wood, and shall overlay them with bronze. And the poles shall be put in the rings, and the poles shall be on the two sides of the slaughter place for the lifting it. For lifting it, make it hollow with boards, as it was shown to you on the mountain. So they are to make it. Okay, there we see another confirmation that whatever was described was also shown. So it was represented in a form that he could actually have a visual identification of it. Yes, so this speaks of the bronze altar. Of course, we'd have read of an altar on the inside. No, we're reading of another altar, but this one is the bronze one. The other one would have been made, well, this is also made of acacia wood. And it's 5 by 5 by 3 high. Right? Remember what a cubit was? A cubit was measured from the elbow to the fingertip. That's the general approximation for a cubit. And so this is 5 times that. Right? You shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Right? And you shall overlay it with bronze. I'd have seen other furniture in it overlaid with gold, especially on the edges. But this one is bronze. There's a reference I have here in Shemot chapter 30 verse 2. It says, it shall be 1 cubit long and 1 cubit wide and square and 2 cubits high. Its horns shall be of one piece with it. And that's in description of the altar of incense. So hopefully that adds to our understanding. It says its horns are of the same or from it. And what I'm getting is that just as the menorah was designed with all the 6 candlesticks, 6 extensions and the 7th one in the middle, it was of one talent of gold. Right? That means they weren't made separately and joined. Because sometimes when something is made and then joined or welded on, it appears a little tacky at the joining. So here, the same with this altar. And the horns were made on it. So it's carved out on it. Right? So it's just one complete thing. And bronze, of course, it's not as valuable as silver or gold. Right? But it still has value. That's a good thing. How does this altar differ from the incense altar mentioned in Shemot chapter 30 verse 2? Well, I've just read it. This one that we're reading is 5 by 5 by 3. The incense altar is 1 cubit by 1 by 1 by 2 cubits high. So it's much smaller. Well, maybe more than half smaller. So this one is more than twice it. Right? But what's similar though is that both have horns of one piece, but they serve well. When we read more, we'll see that the purposes are different. The question of the horn being from it, right, and not separate, is noted, and it could represent that it's an integrated piece, or the fact that it shares its strengths and set apartness, and it's not tacked onto it. In verse 3, we see mention of pots as well, and shovel, and basins, fork and fire holders. So quite a few utensils, right? There was also a bronze grating halfway up, right? So I don't know what that bronze grating is, but that is a bronze network. The verse this describes it, right? So one thing we know, anything where there's fire, there's going to be ashes, and ashes going to be dropping below, right? So that's why the pan would be there, and the shovel will be there. So I do understand that very well. So that is used to manage the fire and the ashes, right? In terms of what these are made out of, acacia wood largely, and we see that a lot. I believe that when it's made out of wood, it's more manageable to carry than opposed to if it was just full gold or full bronze or full silver. That would have been far much load, especially if they were to carry it through the wilderness and in order to keep it in shape and so on. So the creator with his in his wisdom in design specified the right materials with to be carried, be made well and carried perfect in perfection. Let's read 9 to 11. And you shall make the courtyard of the dwelling place. For the south side screens for the courtyard made of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long for one side, and its 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze, the hooks of the columns and their bands of silver. And for the north side in length, screens 100 cubits long with its 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze, and the hooks of the columns and their bands of silver. So we see that there's going to be hangings. There's going to be hangings on the side. We also see that these hangings were linen. There's mention of the south side. I mainly remember that the entrance is on the east and the back is on the west. But in terms of what is on the south side, it shows the length, 100 cubits long. So that's bigger than the other measurements that we have seen earlier in these past 3 chapters. 20 pillars and 20 bronze sockets. So the sockets, the hooks and bands, those are standard in the scheme of construction. So we see this describing from the outer courtyard, the fine linens hanging. Right, we see the pillars, and we see the south repeated and the north repeated as well. Do we notice that mention of the south is done in verse 9, and then we see it mentioned again. So what is the significance of mentioning the south and the north? What about that direction or that location? All right, so mention was made of the width as well. But I think if you mention south, you don't have to mention north, because if they're parallel, they should be the same measurement. Length from the back side of the west to the left side of the west to the right side of the west should be the same length as the measurement from the left side of the east to the right side of the west. Because if it's like a rectangle or a square, then the sides are equal. But out of elimination of doubt and guess, I think both measures are highlighted so that no construction goes wrong. Can you imagine something as expensive as this? Can you imagine just one bad measurement? It might cause the need to do over the entire thing, right? So it shows that it had good symmetry, and it had good balance in terms of the length and same length and facing each other. The courtyard outside. Well, I believe that once it's created for the purpose of the creator, it is a set apart space. I can see why the inner part would be more set apart than the outer part, but it's still what some would say is holy ground, even the courtyard. So more persons should be on the outside, right? I'm more than likely the ordinary persons like myself, and some of us. Then you'd have the dignitaries or the priests, the more reverend ones. Those would be on the inside. All right, we'll read from 12 to the end. And the width of the courtyard on the west side screens of 50 cubits with their 10 columns and their 10 sockets. And the width of the courtyard on the east side, 50 cubits. And the screens on one side of the gate, 15 cubits with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. And on the other side, screens of 15 cubits with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. And for the gate of the courtyard, a covering 20 cubits long of blue and purple and scarlet material and fine woven linen, made by a weaver, 4 columns and 4 sockets. All the columns around the courtyard have bands of silver, their hooks silver, and their sockets bronze. The length of the courtyard is 100 cubits, and the width 50 by 50, and the height 5 cubits, woven of fine linen thread, and its sockets of bronze. See, like it's been repeated. All the utensils of the dwelling place for all its services, all its pegs, and all the pegs of the courtyard are bronze. Okay, we're not done, but we rest at 19. So it started out by talking about the west side, and what of course that would parallel the east side, and the dimensions are mentioned: 50 cubits, 10 and their 10 sockets. So what I really want to know, what is the full size of the entire yard? I want to know how much space is it, have a general picture of what is it. I remember that the biggest reading that we read, biggest measure that we read was 100 cubits long by 50 cubits wide. I'm familiar with 100-yard race or the 100-meter race. So if it's anything near that, then it's big enough to play football or half of a football field, right? And so it is adequate space, for fellowship, for people to gather, right? And we see mention of the east side. Is there any difference between what's on the east side versus what is on the west side? Which side is the favored side? Right, I didn't see a difference. If anyone sees a difference, can point that out to us. All right, we're not. We move on from that. I also saw something about fine woven linen. The embroidery again being pronounced as with the previous chapter. This gate had embroidery on it. Well, it's a gate. If it's a gate, it's an entrance, and if it's an entrance, then it must look good, right? So, kind of bring things off, nice it up, and the entrance you'd want it to look beautiful and welcoming. So, if you're moving from the camp part into the inner part worship, or you're moving from any community coming into the camp, then you know you come into a lovely place. So the embroidery really made things stand out. And as I said, we must. It's good to take time to beautify the space within which we operate. And where we are, we believe that the Creator wants to dwell with us all along. And so, for the sake of you know the fact that we are in we he can visit us. I believe that he can actually, well, not even if not in a physical sense, but for our fulfillment it must look good too, because if we can't keep the place nice when we by ourselves, then if visitors come welcome, then it might be just a little turn off. Let's read some more, 20 and 21. Oh, so these are the two final verses. And you are to command the children of Israel to bring out you clear oil of pressed olives for the light, to cause the lamp to burn continually. In the tent of appointment, outside the veil which is before the witness, Aaron and his sons are to tend it from evening until morning before the Creator, a law forever to their generations from the children of Israel. It just jumped out at me that Moshe's name is not mentioned anywhere in this chapter. It's the first I'm reading a chapter since Moses came on the scene, and his name is not mentioned. Well, what did Moses do? Or why didn't it need? Why did it not? Why wasn't it mentioned? We see mention of something significant though in these two verses. We see the mention of the oil. Oil is used for the lamp. Lamp is used for light. Israel was meant to be a light to the nation and to reflect and project, all the favor that the Creator has placed on them. Right, this light must literally continue to burn. Must burn continually. Somebody said itinerally because con is just maybe some trickery kind of thing. But it must be forever burning, in other words, throughout the generations. What does that mean? Because as far as I know, there's nowhere light is continuing burning nonstop to this day. But the matter of the oil, it must be clear, and clear oil suggests a pure oil. Just like if you purchase honey and it doesn't look clear, then you wonder if it's the real thing. It kind of shows up its authenticity. Right? It must be pressed olives. Okay, pressed olives. Oh. Right. I consume olives these days, and each time I read, I wonder if it's the same olives as the olives that was mentioned in Torah. It seems highly salty. I don't know if it's by because it has a bad taste, it's salted, or it comes naturally salty. But if I stand directed on this, I'd like to know a little more about olive, and if one day we should even try to press the olive to see if it could become oil, pure oil. it's worth trying. Right, but the main purpose of this is to cause the lamp to burn. I believe if the oil is not pure, then the light will not blow steadily. The most I've used with oil with light was bottle lamp back in the day when light gone, and the torch, the bottle lamp, and the home sweet home. And I know nothing must not go into the oil, but that's different. That's not it. That's kerosene, or that's a different thing. But just using the analogy of oil and lamp, right? Sometimes the fire just goes up and down and waver, and maybe it may burn differently according to the quality of the oil that is used. I'm just thinking. And the continual, it doesn't mean that it doesn't blow out. I'm learning. It actually means that, the priest back then would tend to it from evening to morning, and it continues like that. So every night there was light. Every night there was light. There was no night that there was no light. Or could it be that in the day the light was burning? Because why would you really need to burn light in the day when there's sunlight? There's, the daylight there already. To be good to have your perspective on this. All right, so we're at the end of the chapter. We see Aaron's name mentioned, and here we're actually seeing that Aaron and his sons are to tend it from evening until. So the timing of this would be after the Levites were chosen as the firstborn, or before, because this is where we're seeing it. All right, that's it basically. End of chapter. We should have a quiz I'll share in the group pertaining to the dimension of the altar. Any thoughts? All right, if not, then my sister, do you think the oil burned from night to day and day to night, or it just burned every night?
I wonder that, but because one of the things that I look at is that there are attendants that you have those priests who take care of the temple. You have various areas of the temple. There are designated priests for that. But in terms of the internal part where only the high priest is already, I don't know, But I thought, it's possible, the father just kept it burning, but with all that is happening these days, I am not too sure about anything anymore.
I'm not sure about that part for sure. Okay, that's fine. That's reasonable. Right. Yeah, there's natural light, and the night, you'd need the night for light. My new view on night is that night is for sleeping. So if my family around me wasn't afraid of the dark, or anything like that, I would just lock off all light, and as soon as 7 o'clock at night come, we sleep until light comes. So here we do. I believe that's night is for sleeping, but we are using light, and we see nothing's wrong. Use light. Light was used here to give light, and they said it is said that it was to be used burn continually, and continue mean that as continual could mean continue to use it as it's always needed, as long as it's needed, and it's definitely needed in the night for those who do not want to sleep at nights. So
one of the things that I'm remembering just now is when he gave the instructions for the oil for the lamp. He gave specific instructions in terms of the ingredients, and he told them that this must not be replicated by anybody, because they will die. And so I'm looking at it from the perspective that based on the ingredients, let's look at You have some candles that burn quickly, some that burn long. So it could be the same thing with the oil. Based on the ingredients, you have some things in there that will cause the oil to be long lasting.
Mhm.
Because there are appointed times when the priest would go in and refill these things and stuff. So I guess based on the ingredients, it was meant to last for until the time the painting or refilling came around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad it comes up for mention because the next chapter, Shemot chapter 28, which we'll do tomorrow, all being well, speaks about bronze altar and the ever burning light. So don't worry, we'll get it. All right, but thanks for sharing. All right, that's the end of our study for Shemot chapter 27. Shalom,